Imagine discovering that the person you vowed to spend your life with, the mother of your children, was sneaking around with her high school ex. Now imagine not just catching her, but making sure her lover lost everything in the process. That's exactly what happened in today's story. And trust me, this revenge hits harder than you think.
Imagine discovering that the person you vowed to spend your life with, the mother of your children, was sneaking around with her high school ex. Now imagine not just catching her, but making sure her lover lost everything in the process. That's exactly what happened in today's story. And trust me, this revenge hits harder than you think. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever dreamed of exposing the truth and watching karma do its work, then buckle up. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into one of the most brutal and most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. The early 2000s. Life felt stable. Or at least it looked that way on the surface. I was married, raising 2 kids, 4 and 6 years old, juggling work and parenthood, doing everything I could to provide the kind of family I never had growing up. But beneath that routine, something didn't feel right. It started small. The kids would chatter at the dinner table, talking about spending whole days at their grandparents' house, my wife's parents. Now, that wouldn't be strange if it happened once in a while, but they lived 90 minutes away. And my wife was taking them there too, sometimes 3 times a week. Why drive 3 hours round trip on random weekdays, especially when she only worked part-time? When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. Said she just wanted her parents to see the kids more often. But her voice wavered. Her eyes didn't meet mine. And I'll be honest, she was a terrible liar. That's when the paranoia started to creep in. That gnawing sense in the pit of my stomach that someone was pulling her away from me. I couldn't confront her without evidence. So I started small. I tracked her car mileage. Week after week, the numbers didn't lie. She was driving over 400 extra miles. My chest tightened every time I wrote down the numbers. 400 miles. Not once. Not twice. Every week. One afternoon, I sat down at our computer, and there it was, a sticky note beside the keyboard. Her AOL password, written in blue ink. Like some careless invitation. My heart hammered. My palms were sweating. But I typed it in anyway. And that's when I found them, emails. Dozens of them. They weren't to me. They weren't to her parents. They were to her best friend from college. And buried in those exchanges, between casual updates and gossip, were confessions. My wife was having regular sex with one of her high school ex-boyfriends. The words blurred as I read them. My stomach churned. Rage and heartbreak clashed inside me, a storm I couldn't control. I printed every single email. But I needed more. I reached out to an old friend, a police officer, and told him everything. He connected me with Ron, a private investigator who had left the force to do freelance work. Ron was sharp, professional, and most importantly, he knew how to dig. I handed him the emails, the mileage logs, everything. And within weeks, he came back with a report that made my blood boil. Photos. Dates. Times. The routine was always the same. She'd drop the kids at her parents' house. Then she'd meet this man for lunch. Then a modest hotel for hours. And then, as if nothing had happened, she'd drive back, pick up the kids, and come home to me. The betrayal felt total. But the report gave me something else, clarity. It was no longer suspicion. It was truth. And now, I knew what I had to do. I hired a divorce lawyer immediately. I wasn't going to repeat my parents' mistakes. Both of them had cheated, and my siblings and I had been collateral damage. I swore I'd never let my kids grow up in that same chaos. But I wasn't finished yet. I asked Ron to dig deeper into the man she was seeing. And wow, Ron delivered. His name was Bob. Married. 3 children. And here's the kicker. He was vice president of sales at his father-in-law's company. Meaning, his entire career was tied directly to the family of the woman he was betraying. This wasn't just an affair. It was a ticking time bomb. So I made a plan. I asked my lawyer to finalize the divorce papers. And then, I asked Ron for 2 more copies of his report. One was for me. One was for my wife's lover's wife. The day my wife was served divorce papers at her job, Ron drove across town and handed the other report to Bob's wife. From what I heard later, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She went ice cold. She took the report, read every page, and then started making phone calls. That was the beginning of the end for Bob. His wife emptied their joint bank accounts. She took the kids and left. And when her father, The man who owned the company Bob worked for found out the fallout was catastrophic. Bob was kicked out of the house. He was fired from his cushy VP job. His marriage imploded into a vicious court battle. There were fights, police reports, restraining orders. At one point, his brother-in-law even broke his nose. He went from a man with a family, a career, and a future to nothing. All because he couldn't keep his vows, or his hands, to himself. That I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't humiliate him in public. I simply set the truth free. And the truth destroyed him. As for my wife, we divorced. I kept things civil for the kids. I didn't talk to her about anything outside of parenting. And when the kids grew up, I cut all contact. That I don't hate her. I don't even think about her much anymore. But she's not part of my story now. Not really. What mattered most? My kids grew up safe. Without the lies. Without the drama. And Bob. He disappeared. Moved out of state.